funny enough, Anthony told me, Mario, these kites can be used militarily by Hamas, and they have been used by Afghanistan as a way to communicate to one another. Other people have said, Israeli voices have said, they've been used to drop incendiaries to start fires. And then others are saying these are just children playing, even though the wire is one kilometer long. These are just children playing because they don't have Xboxes in Gaza. What's your position on this?
Yes. That's my position. First, yeah, we talked about it long and hard in my show this morning. I have my show notes on two different levels. First off, what would be the military view of someone who's flying a kite? It's we have various methodologies for terrorist groups to communicate with each other or to gain information. All of this really stems from the fact that this kite went over Israeli territory, which I don't know if you've not been to Gaza. I've been right up on the fence at Nahal. Okay, you're looking at Gaza. 1 kilometer is the garden, what remains of whatever they had of open area where kids could go out and do anything, right? If you're in the urban environment there, you're not going to be flying kites. However, the Israeli take on this is that pretty much anything that causes you any modicum of fun and enjoyment is a way of conducting reconnaissance. As Israel Katz, the Israeli Minister of Defense, said yesterday, if it's a balloon, it'll be a kite. If it's a kite, it'll be a drone. Whether armed or unarmed, we don't care. We will respond to it in the most forceful and strenuous manner. This is something I would like to have heard Colonel Aguilar talk about, because he was there. He was part of that U.S. assistance force in Gaza, right down at the pier doing humanitarian operations. And that's where he got his eye-opening view of how the Israelis do war. The problem is that if any armed force would view this flying a kite, as a form of practicing for reconnaissance, or the most likely one that they constantly bring up with balloons, right? You just release a little helium balloon and that balloon would go up in the air and it would drift over this place, and that would give you your ballistic weather for the rockets that you're going to launch, or
but they haven't launched a rocket. They haven't launched a rocket in like a year and a half.
Yeah, of course, because they have no capacity for that, and also launch a rocket, 1,000 civilians die. Let's be honest about the way that the Israelis do war is not the way they used to do war. They don't care anymore about who's on the receiving end of their fire. And that is, to me, a very dishonorable way of conducting warfare. I've been in the Middle East in ground warfare from Beirut all the way up to, the Iraq war. And, if the enemy gains a 0.5% fraction of an advantage by flying a kite that might have a freaking blink camera on it that's doing this level of reconnaissance, look, you can't just kill people over that. Yeah. Okay,
but there's no reconnaissance, there's no cameras or anything. The kites had nothing on them, just to be fair.
And that's the point. The quote by Minister Katz was, armed or unarmed, right? They view any interaction using any aerial device in there. You could cut a kite loose, you could set it on fire, cut it loose, it could become an incendiary device. It could carry a bottle of gasoline, right? And a match. Could carry a hand grenade. Yeah, it could carry any number of things. Then again, you're besieging 2.2 million people. They could catapult dead bodies into Israeli army camps. That was done in the medieval period. The point is that you cannot fight like this and attempt to maintain their honor. My friend, Robert Spencer, he was West Point School of Urban Warfare. Guy is a tunnel master. He was one of the first guys that said, early on, the Israelis were fighting with as much regard for civilians as could possibly be done. That's over with. We now know, God, it bugs me because I was a big supporter for a long time, but I'm that good friend who won't let you drive drunk, right? Yeah. The Israelis now have a complete and total organizational disregard for the lives of Palestinians. And to go out and say, if we see a kite, we're going to put mortar rounds or artillery, or we're going to use a sniper to kill that individual, even if it's a child. And that's essentially what he was saying. Now you're like saying, you know, I don't think we have enough accusations of being war criminals. Literally, if there's a balloon party, right, which I don't know how there would be, considering that there's you know, a good piece, most of Gaza has been devastated. But if somebody had a little helium and made a balloon, and the balloon veers off, you know, you can't go around and level a neighborhood because of that. And my problem with this is that I think now they have such a callous, inhuman disregard for human life of Palestinians that they don't care anymore. And look, I was on the Israeli side when I went to the kibbutzim. I mean, that I was literally in Israel when I went to, you know, the massacre at the dance party and Kfar Oz and all these other places. And I saw the attack. I have Hamas battle flags that were captured, you know, and I understood the intensity and the murderousness of Hamas's attack. But that was Hamas, right? It wasn't some kid that maybe 2 or 3 years old who was born 6 months after the war who's flying a fucking kite. And that gives you the, you know, it allows you to dishonor yourself through force of arms by going out and killing civilians. It's just unsat. And my problem is, we were talking about this because the guy I had on was Dexter Ingram, somebody you should have on, former director of the War for Combating ISIS, right? This guy and combating extremism. And we were talking about Seb Gorka, the new director, senior director for counterterrorism, big fat fuck. And this slack ass, who has never been in the intelligence community, never did anything, named himself a terrorism expert. You know, he drives a 4-cylinder Mustang. This guy is now in charge of all U.S. policy on this, and he certainly wouldn't raise his voice to this. He would never say, hey, you know, killing kids because they're out flying kites, that only creates a lot more terrorists. And the policy in the White House now is this. Whatever the Israelis say is okay, except for this settler thing that they're having. They suddenly had a 180-degree reversal on. But as far as they're concerned, killing everybody else is fine. That is dishonorable. It is not how we as allies should allow our friends to be, you know, warring drunk, if you want to put it in simplified terms. And they don't hold anyone accountable. Now it comes from the Minister of Defense and Netanyahu, which means it comes from Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir. Kill who you want to kill, because flying a kite now is an act. He said it, quote unquote. This is an act of war. Insane.
So is it linked to, first, extremely well articulated. Second, is it linked to the story out? Because literally the day before that came out, the whole kite thing 2 days ago, the day before, one of my things on my agenda was a report by Mariv that talked about how Netanyahu, there's reports that Israeli officers were concerned that Netanyahu plans to escalate in Gaza in order to delay the elections. So that story came out from Mariv a day before I saved it. I'll try to find it a day before. And then a day later, I see the story about the kites now being a problem and they're going to strike, and they put out a complaint. Today, they put out a complaint to, let me see, there it is. So they've issued a 3-day ultimatum through the Board of Peace, demanding, so now they've escalated these fucking kites by children to the Board of Peace with a 3-day ultimatum that demanding that the launch of kites from Gaza be stopped. They put now the launch, and before they kind of put the kites along with drones. Israeli officials warned that continued launches would trigger a major escalation, with one security official saying it will significantly increase the pace of strikes if this continues. The Israeli security establishment claims that the kites are being flown by Hamas. Do you think that's linked to the story a day before this kite thing happened, that Netanyahu is doing it intentionally to delay the elections? Could it be linked?